microphone's on. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee meeting, June 25th, 2020. It's been a whole universe ago since the last time we met, and I really appreciate you all coming here tonight. We'll start off this evening's meeting with roll call, please. If you raise your hands just to let everybody know who you are, so we can, because I don't recognize you with the mask on.
I'm here. I have my hand up. Can't you see me?
We see it now.
Here.
Garcias. Randy Kreis. Joe Cotty.
That was we got excused absence.
And Sandra Dottie.
Anyone we missed?
All right, we have a quorum, so we are legal to go forward with our meeting. Before we go on with the minutes, just some rules for a common sense approach to how we're going to do this meeting. If you have a question during any of the presentations, raise your hand, come up to the podium so we can get your comments and questions on the record. Votes will be roll call votes. If they get to be contentious or it's not a clear determination with the yeas or nays, we'll ask for hands, and we can do it that way to try to keep it moving as quickly as possible. We're going to try to run this as a very relaxed, informal session because of the way we're all dispersed throughout the auditorium, but we still want to make sure that all the members get all their questions and concerns and opinions aired on the record. So if that's agreeable to everybody, we can go forward with the record, with the meeting. Any questions at this point with regard to that procedure? All right, very good. First item on the agenda is approval of the prior minutes. You all got them emailed to you after the last meeting. I read them because I apologize for not being at the last meeting. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Can we have a motion to approve the minutes? In a second? Second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Any public comment this evening? Any members of the public wish to address the committee? Seeing none. All right, we will move into the capital budget. Amy.
Very good. Thank you very much. Good evening, members of our committee. We worked the last time that we were together, and as Mr. Merzirkowitz said, it seemed like it's been so long ago since the last time we got together in December because of everything that's been going on related to COVID. So it really is nice to see everybody here today. But at our last meeting, we had some discussion about some changes and updates to the information that the committee talked about that they would like to see. So we heard you pretty clearly, you know, less numbers, more pictures, and so, and kind of, and the way that we compile the information, and you asked for some specific things. And we do hope that this presentation that you see today is a reflection of those things that you had kind of called for the last time that we were together. So we look forward to your feedback. We know that this is a work in progress, and we're happy to try to adjust to the things that the committee would like to see. So, so just keep that in mind as we go through this presentation, and you know, we look forward to whatever feedback you have for us. So first, we just wanted to give an overview. We talked quite a little bit the last time about the overall capital budget in general. So we wanted to give an overview of what that capital budget looks like. So this pie, when we're looking at for the fiscal year 2020 of our capital budget of $390 million, it's made up of several different pieces of funding, including sales tax. So this chart tells you all the different funding sources, of which our property tax being the biggest source of funding within our capital, and then very closely after that, our district sales tax, which is 30% of the capital budget, originally for FY20 at $117.6 million. So just a graphic here for you related to that. I sure am. Actually, I just realized that I was not in view mode, so there you go. Okay. So just a representation of that capital budget and the piece, the 30% piece that sales tax makes of the budget itself. And then within, when we break down that capital or that sales tax budget into the different pieces of that, we've maintained 4 different categories for expenditures beneath that would be included in sales tax that we agreed would encompass everything that we said we would do within the sales tax resolution and as we took it out to the voters. And those 4 categories are represented for you here: maintenance, safety, technology, and construction. And we show the percentages of the pie that total amount is. And yes, and please, I forgot to mention, if you have questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to raise your hands. And I'm going to ask if you would step up to the podium on the side and speak into the microphone so that for the benefit of the recording, your question will be recorded.
It's Steve Shemp asking the question. The reserve, is that budgeted carryover into the next year?
It is, yes. Thank you for that question. And please don't hesitate as we go along. If you have any, raise your hand, come on up to either podium on the side would be fine to address that question for us and the public. So then in terms of the categories of projects that we would discuss today, and we talked about each of the 4 broad categories that we have beneath our referendum, but then in each of these, what we decided to highlight based on the conversations that we had are kind of these 3 areas here. So within those 4 categories, we're going to highlight major things that have happened within our new schools and major renovations. We've got major projects, and by major, we define that as projects that are greater than $1 million. So we'll go into details on those, and then we'll give an overview on all of the other projects that are encompassed within sales tax during our year. So to address that first category with our new schools and major renovations, we have with us the esteemed Director of Facilities and Construction. That is Mr. Scott Rickenbacker, and he'll come to give some details related to our new schools and major renovations, as well as those projects that are over $1 million.
Good evening, ISSOC committee, superintendent, board members. This is an update for all the new sales tax referendum projects we're engaged with. As the sheet shows, Gateway High School, otherwise known as MMM, is underway. All the major components of the buildings are dried in. MM Middle School is underway as well. All foundations are poured, and we're actually starting precast, and we'll get to the slides. We're starting precast on July 6th. Lehigh Senior High School, as you're aware, is also opened as of August of 2019 and functioning the way it should. Gateway High School is still scheduled to open in August of 2021. The total project cost is still $98 million, $193,950. We've been able to do many changes in there in terms of some landscaping to meet with the committee, all within the budget. We are on track, and we do not see any reason why we won't be returning some money to the district on that project when it's done. The Building A, you can read these slides. I don't want to go into great giant detail, but you can look at the pictures. Right now, all of our buildings are dried in. The roofs are on. We're doing sheetrock, installation of rough-in utilities, ductwork, sheetrock, ceramic tile. It's ongoing. We're grading our ball fields now, getting ready to sprig that during the wet season. So you'll see that activity going on in the next month. All of the roof, as I said, is dried in, and our windows are going in, and the whole facility, we should be able to fire up some air conditioning, hopefully here, maybe the end of August in that building. You're looking at the one picture. Those are actually figurines that were poured into the precast panel. In the gymnasium building, it represents sports figures, and in the music and arts building, it represents arts programs. Next slide. Gateway High School. COVID has turned a whole new chapter in all of our lives. We have a program on this site where every employee has to go through a checkpoint and is badged. In addition, we have a hired health person that screens them with a temperature gauge. They get a sticker, and if they refuse to be screened, they're turned away from work for that day. Fortunately, we have benefited and are accelerating our schedule there at no additional cost because we were able to take on all of those laborers from other jobs that have been shut down. So we're going great guns. We've had very few people turn away and walk away, and the progress in the job is just going gangbusters. So we're real pleased with that. Middle school MM. This is a job out in Lehigh. It's the foundations have been completed. We're doing all the underground work, and the precast panels are being poured at this moment in time, and we expect the first panel to be raised. You'll probably see it in the media starting July 6th. And that project, total project cost came in at $54,244,892, and that's your tax dollars as well. There's just some pictures. You can see where the form work is going on, and for those of you who aren't aware what precast panels are, you form them on the ground, you put in all your rebar, your steel, your door openings, window openings, so forth. You pour it on grade. They set for about 14 days, and then the crane comes and pulls them, and you pour a set of these beds and then stand it. That's why you saw Gateway High School go up so quick. In a couple of weeks, there was nothing, and then all of a sudden you see an entire building stood. Lehigh Senior, you're hearing it first. We did two things on there. We did an addition building, which houses just over 400 students, and it's a big ROTC component within that building. So we created some large cumulative areas that have the ability to be separated if needed, but open areas for the large volume of ROTC that they have in that school. There's a rappelling tower that we built into the building on the end face where the stairwell was. So there's a zip line that comes off of the building and a rappelling tower. So that's kind of new and a little bit something special that we were able to design into that building. We are in the auditing stage of that job right now, and we anticipate right now at least a minimum of a $750,000 return to the district coffers. So that's through the buyout, through the construction, that we will be returning to the district coffers $750,000 of what was a $13 million total project cost request. And that includes our direct material purchasing, and if you're not familiar with how that goes, when we engage with the construction manager, we get a credit change order once the job begins for all the cost of the materials. And internally in my department, we then purchase from the vendors that material directly, and we don't have to pay sales tax. And again, that is all money that comes back to the district. Typically on a high school, you might see about $750,000 in tax savings. Okay, next slide. This is just a couple of pictures of the interior of what was done. Inside, this is one of the large JROTC areas where it's opened up for large community events and teachings for ROTC. A little bit of a more modern look with exposed ductwork and so forth. And that leads out to a large pavilion, covered pavilion, so that they can do their drills and they can do all those things that you would do in an ROTC program. We modernized and updated the existing school, and in total, we were able to capture 722 seats in this campus. 400, a little over 400, about 415, I believe, in the new addition building, but we gained the other 300 in repurposing and reutilizing the existing space inside the existing campus. So this was a big buy in student seats for $13 million total project cost. And then outside the bottom right picture, that's that pavilion I'm speaking of, the outside pavilion. Roofing projects. Right now, we are getting ready to kick off two major projects. The first one, Calusa, you can see on the list, is completed and was completed under budget. Cypress Lake High School. We have a problem at Cypress Lake High School. We went in and we got some estimates when we did the capital expenditure program. And what we found is once we engaged with our roofing consultants who does all the design work, we did some destructive testing of the roof. And we found that it's actually a roof over a roof. So the original concept was just a roof replacement. Unfortunately, now I had to pay extra money to rip off that second layer. And in addition, during the destructive testing, we found what they call lightweight concrete. So you'll have a deck system and they pour lightweight concrete on top of that. That's the substrate. Your insulation goes on top of that, and then your roof layers, usually 3-4 ply roof system. So we came in at, we requested to the board $4,209,823. We estimate that we'll be going back to the board July 28th for an increase to $4,958,053. So it's an add of $748,000. So that's just the difference in what we found when we did destructive testing of what we assume would be a normal roof rip-off and replacement. G. Weaver Hips, that is a maintenance project, and that's ongoing through maintenance, is putting that roof on through their local yearly vendors. Norfolk Myers High School, we're doing a re-roof there. Now here's some good news. We actually went in for a total project cost of $4,423,835. We actually have a deduct. We're getting a credit on that job of $867,000. Once the GMP came in, that's when it was put out to bid. So that's the savings that will be reduced and we will realize back to the district underneath the total project cost request. Villas Elementary, again, a maintenance project that was completed on time and under budget. Southwest Florida Public Service Academy, a $2 million roof, and that was completed on time and under budget as well through maintenance. Next slide, HVAC.
We are, for Mr. Nathan's benefit as well, we are now on page 16 of the presentation, HVAC projects.
Okay. HVAC projects, $1 million and more using referendum money. Cape Coral Elementary School, we have just completed the contracts and we are starting in the design process. We expect that this job will be completed in the summer, June of 2021. Originally it was scheduled to be done earlier. However, there were some design changes and adds to that job through our collaboration with maintenance and our HVAC partners, that the original board amount was not enough that was budgeted for that fiscal year. So we held off. We're getting the extra money, and then we're going to be moving forward with that. And we should be starting that job hopefully in August of 2020, this year. And it should be complete by June of 2021. Cape Coral Technical College, that is being done by the maintenance department as well. That'll be a direct maintenance job on that re-roof. On that HVAC project. Fort Myers High School, a major renovation to the HVAC system on that project. Right now that is scheduled to be completed in June of 2021, and that is on target. Ida Baker High School, we're in the third phase of what was a 3-year program at Ida Baker High School for our budgeting and fiscal years. This is the last and the final phase, which ties in the PLC and Gulf Elementary School chillers into the piping system. That's already been placed out at Ida Baker. And that's a $3 million project, and that will be completed by September 11th of this year, 2020. Norfolk Myers Academy of the Arts, this was another air handling unit and chiller replacement, and $1.4 million, and that was completed on time and under budget. And let's see. I think that's pretty much. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. Goes on to safety. Are there any questions?
I have one.
Yes,
The Cape Coral Technical College, it says expenditure to date's only $132,000. It says completed past tense by district staff. Is there going to be additional expenditures of that $1.5 million?
I can't speak to that. That was a maintenance project out of the maintenance division. But if it's completed, I would assume it's completed and that money will be returned back to the budget.
Yeah.
Thank
So, and we will update on that one. We didn't know at the time that we put these together whether there was any invoices for like materials or anything that we had not yet received. So, we can update on that one the next time to make sure that it was closed out.
And just as a follow-up, when you do district staff, does the capital maintenance for sales tax projects, is there labor charged against the sales tax?
Not here, no. We don't, the numbers for labor you don't see reflected here because typically we would just, it would be during their regular day and we would charge it here. We wouldn't do any cost shifting to take that labor cost and move it back to the sales tax.
All right.
So at least to this point, we have not done that, I will say.
So I have like 5 questions, but they're all easy. Are these large-scale, the high school projects, are they funded only by sales tax dollars, or is there a combination of the capital dollars and the?
Which ones are you referring to? Are you talking about HVAC or?
The gateway or the middle school, is that just sales tax dollars, or is it a combination of sales tax dollars and other capital dollars?
So they most likely will be a combination of both sales tax and impact fee, because the debt service from the borrowings is really what we're paying with the sales tax. Impact fees are a much more restricted source of funding, so to the extent that we can use those first, we will utilize those first, so it will probably be a mixture of the two.
That sort of goes to my second question. So if you save $1 million on that, does that yield back to the sales tax budget or to the other budget?
It would yield back to the sales tax budget because we are going to utilize impact fees as a more restricted funding source first.
So use that and then, okay, so the savings actually do benefit the ISSOC.
Yes, it would.
As it relates to Gateway, it sounds like things are going pretty quickly, but you mentioned that it wouldn't open until August of 2021.
Correct.
Is there any possibility that it could open early, which would enable us additional seats for additional social distancing or to split kids from different schools? Or is it impossible to open it any earlier than August of 21?
It will open earlier. Typically, we have an opening, a soft opening, and get all of the punch lists and mechanicals. Right now, the substantial completion in the contractor's contract is May 1st of 2021.
So really would have no impact on this upcoming year, really? Yeah.
I mean, it
I
could,
didn't think so.
it could help you with summer school programs, athletic programs. We try to get the principal and their staff in as soon as practicable so that they can work in their environment. If we were lucky to see a shift in the market and accelerate it, there are times I have opened a school over Christmas, but it was an elementary school, much different. It was Hector Caffaretta, actually. We had a lot of community support, but that's not the norm. At a high school level, it's the furniture load and everything is much more extensive.
Yeah, I figured. But, facing this new school year where we're going to try to separate kids, I thought, have you seen any decline in prices due to the COVID-19? And partially, second question is, have you been able to expedite projects faster because kids haven't been in school? So some of this got moved up, or is it still on the same?
Well, to answer your first question in terms of the budget, the market is pretty much stabilized. We're not seeing huge leaps in labor and materials right now. The problem we're seeing is the availability of the materials. So much today is controlled by electronics, light fixtures, HVAC equipment, and all these things were made over in Asia, a lot of it. So the factory stopped. So right now, the first person to get in and get their materials and get their orders in place and release it is going to be successful. There's going to come a point in time where a lot of the materials, you're waiting long lead times for them. So right now we've been very fortunate. We haven't experienced it. So far on the middle school that's being built, we've been able to procure all the materials we need to date. We do have some red flags up for light fixtures, but we have plans in place for alternates if need be. But we're seeing a level playing field right now, and labor's abundant. These people that work in the construction industry, they need to work. They want to work, and that was evidenced by just the sheer volume of people we've had on the Gateway High School site There's been no lack of labor. It was a benefit to us. It helped us get the building dried in much quicker before the rainy season came. So there's a cost benefit for that. If I can get it dried in without temporary plastic protection and so on and so forth, it can make a world of difference. So.
Any other questions on the construction portion of the agenda?
Joe, this Jim Nathan.
Go ahead, Jim.
First of all, thanks everybody for indulging me. I'm not ill from the COVID, but I'm on quarantine so that I can see my. I thought the presentation was excellent. The summary was excellent. The one area I continue to be confused on, and I think I may be getting closer, and maybe this is more of an Amy question, but I'm not sure. But is the decision-making process as to what gets put in the sales tax category versus the main construction. And I realize the difference between the in terms of the tax revenues that you get, but I'm trying to figure out how you make that criteria. You clearly have, those of us that are on the committee never questioned the need for additional funding to avoid falling behind, but I'm still confused about how you make that decision.
Okay, thank you for the question. We have a little conversation on that when we get to the financial and the budget portion for the next years. So can we hold that question until we get to that portion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions on the construction? All right, thank you very much. Great
Thank you.
presentation.
Have a good evening.
Okay. And next, I'll have up with us to talk about some of the other significant projects in sales tax, in addition to the financial areas of this sales tax, Mr. Dwayne Alton and Ms. Sarah Cox.
Take your seat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, good evening. Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about some of the safety projects that we've been working on, as well as the technology projects. And when we think about the safety projects, we typically don't get very specific as to what technologies we're implementing in the schools. But we have had I guess, the silver lining of the COVID situation is that we've had the ability to accelerate some of those projects during this last quarter. So believe it or not, we have touched 68 buildings, or 68 campuses have received some security technology upgrades through the sales tax revenue this fiscal year. That's in addition to the additional safety and security projects that we funded through safety grants. So in total, we have probably accelerated, I don't know, 12 additional campuses been able to accelerate this last quarter with some upgrades. Now, some of those upgrades are complete major system overhauls. Some of them are setting the foundation for the next phase of system overhauls at some of those schools. But just about every campus in the district was touched this year with both sales tax and with the safety grant funding. Now, when we get to the technology projects, the two technology projects you see on the list, one is the what we call the Atlas project, or the interactive AV system project. And that's the project where we're going into the schools and we're replacing the smart boards and the projection systems with interactive touch panels. And we have completed 18 of those through the sales tax project thus far, and we have 3 more that'll be done by just short of the fiscal year. We have also the other project that we talked about the last time we got together in December was the increase of the number of devices in the elementary level. And as you know, the last time we got together, we talked about we had just placed that order. All of that equipment has been received and is being distributed, as well as you'll notice an additional expenditure in that area where we increased the density even further during the COVID situation. We brought in additional Chromebooks so that when we were handing out devices to elementary students, we would have enough at the elementary level. So those are the safety technology projects in the AV and elementary computer device density projects. I didn't know if you had any questions. Oh, all right, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Cox. I'm a coordinator in business services. I'm going to go over the revenue slides that we've prepared for you. On this first slide, you will see the monthly sales tax revenue by month earned. And we presented the same information to you the last time we met. And in addition to the graph, we had provided a supplemental table that broke down this information. And I bring that up because in that supplemental table, we had not only the month that the revenue was earned, which is the month that the taxable sale occurred, but we don't actually receive that revenue until 2 months after. So for example, March 2020, that $8.1 million we did not receive until May. So I just wanted to touch on that point with you. This next slide is our projections versus actuals. And we have inception to date, so from January 2019 till current as of June 9th when we prepared this information. The FY20 column represents 10 months worth. At the time that we prepared this, we had 10 months worth of revenue data. So the projected and the actual column is only representing 10 months worth. And then the quarter to date, I think in the presentation that we sent out to you, so in case you're looking at a copy of that, FY20 I believe had quarter 2. That was a typo. This is quarter 3, which would represent the sales that occurred from January to March of 2020. This next slide, I was really excited about this data. I've been waiting to get that year-over-year data to see what 2019 compared to 2020 was going to look like, just to help us identify some trends, help us with our projections as we get further along into the sales tax. So you can see we started out in January really strong. We had an 11% increase, which was really exciting to me. And then we had COVID come in, and by March, we had an 8% decrease in our revenue. So that leads us into our 21 revenue projections. And before I go into detail about this, one piece of information that we did not put into this presentation is the FY20 revenue projections. We do recognize that the 20 revenue projections are impacted, so we did revise those, but we didn't officially change the budget because we have that cushion in reserves, but we did anticipate an $8 million loss in FY20 in our revenue. So when we did these projections, when we relooked at the FY20 projections and even did our 21 projections, this was at the end of March. So when COVID was just getting going in our nation, and so we made these projections on a lot of assumptions, particularly in FY20, where we were assuming, like other countries, we would experience some type of shutdown. So the 21 is kind of built off of kind of those things we thought would happen in FY20. So we laid out 3 scenarios for our FY21 projections. We did go with projection number 1. That is what is in our FY21 budget. It is the most conservative projection, but our thought is that, we'd rather be conservative and be able to add if we have the ability to do that. So for FY20, though, we do have 1 month left of sales tax revenue to collect, 1 month, 1 quarterly adjustment. We just got our June, so that the taxable sale that would have occurred in April during the month our state was shut down. We did get that number released from the Department of Revenue today, and that revenue number came in at $4.3 million. So that is 35% less than the revenue we saw this time last year. So a pretty big hit, but the good news is that with 1 month left to collect, one quarterly adjustment to collect, we have $7.6 million more to meet the current $83 million revenue projection. So while we may not hit that, our loss of the projected loss that we had of $8 million won't be that. It won't be that. So, and you can see at the bottom of this slide, we also provided the totals of our new 5-year projection. So this will be FY21 through FY25. Our new 5-year projection is over $320 million compared to what it was, almost $501 million. Are there any questions on this? This is 5 years forward, so FY21 through FY25 is the $320.6 million revenue projection.
I have one question. You use the State Department revenue projections, Florida revenue
Yes, we do look at the Florida Economic Office. They do produce an annual report. It usually, so for FY21, their report won't come out till around September, so we don't have that data to look at now, but we also look at Department of Revenue data and what the collections in Lee County look like.
Because obviously there's going to be a downturn even going forward to your first quarter of 21, fiscal year 21, until at least first quarter of 21, and how much that may or may not impact going forward. I know the state group that gets together and does their revenue projections for all the state funds. They distribute a lot of data. I didn't know, are you watching that data
Yes,
too?
sir. We download data from the Department of Revenue all the time, and I think someone here on this committee at our last meeting had brought up the Economic Development Office out of FGCU, and so we have started looking at reports that they publish, especially during this period of COVID-19. We've depended on the reports they're producing a lot. I mean, they've been polling businesses, large and small, asking them what the impact is to their sales. You know, even the activity that's going in and out of our local airports. So that's all being considered as we look at developing these projections.
The other thing that I would hope that you take in consideration, even though the impact has not been maybe as great as we thought it has been bolstered by the federal stimulus
Yes.
spending. So that you know, the understanding that as we go forward and the impact of the COVID, whether it goes a second cycle or annual cycle, without the support of that federal stimulus spending, what that may do to your revenue. Because most of those, I would believe, most of those stimulus dollars continue to provide purchasing power, which equals sales tax for most Floridians.
Yes, that is our hope, and I'm sure, as you know, there's so many things to take into account here. This is just uncharted territory for us as a state, nation, internationally, so there's so many things to take into account, just general economic activity, you know, what's happening with GDP, consumer sentiment, those type of things, so we do look at all of those factors.
Someone who does revenue projections for government as a part of my business, the most conservative projections, minus 10%, it's kind of like that's where I am with almost everything that I do now. And we take, you know, I take all the input from all the state revenue projectors that I can see, and I just drop it by 10%, and that's where I'm at for future revenue projections. I'm glad that you're taking your most conservative approach going forward.
Yes, thank you.
There's just too much unknown.
Exactly.
Thank you. Getting your steps in today.
Yes, I am, sorry. So in the worst case scenario, it's a $180 million reduction over the next 5 years. Are you going to lay out the things that were projected and budgeted in the 5-year plan that are going to come out for the
Yes.
$180 million?
Yes, sir, and that is things we're working on now.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that will be reported out to the committee?
Yeah, in September. So we are still going through that process now. And that's why we have a total number here as far as the revenue projection in the 5 years, but we haven't finished finalizing yet. So what does that mean in terms of our 5 years, in terms of projects in, projects out? So we're still working on that.
And I might suggest a communication strategy as it relates to that when it comes out. Because that's, you're going to take something out that people have expected.
Right, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions regarding the revenue projections? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so given that, that information and Sarah, can you give us, repeat again, you might have said, you talked about the quarter to date, but just kind of what we expected in May or June collections and kind of what we projected versus what we've received, because I think this is very new information.
Are you talking about here in quarter 3, or are you saying data that is not here?
Data that may not be here that we just
So the only
found
data
out.
that is not here is the revenue that was just released from the Department of Revenue today, and that was the $4.3 million that is coming. So that was based on April taxable sales, money we will receive any day now, and that amount is $2.3 million less, or 35% less than what we received last June.
Thank you. So that was those collections for April, that $4.3 million that we just found out today that we were receiving. That was for the month of April, which would have been that first major month that, everything kind of shut down. We shut down here towards the end of March, so we saw a little bit of an impact in March, but we knew April was going to be the big month that we would see it. And I believe our projection of what we projected to receive in revenue based on that downturn was $3.3 million.
Correct.
Right? So it did exceed what our preliminary projection was, just based on kind of every little piece of information that we could scrap together, because there really wasn't too much out there to let us know. But so that was just some very new information that we found out today. So a pretty big hit, 35% reduction from the previous month, and it does give
the previous year.
I'm sorry, from the previous year, and it gives us an indication of where we might be headed, at least for the next several months. So that was information hot off the press that we wanted you to have for today.
Have there been any projects in this fiscal year that have dropped off because of the reduction in revenue?
Uh-oh, we lost Mr. Nathan again. Okay, I think he's going to try to call him back again and see can we get him on. So for this fiscal year, we were able to punt a little bit and kind of get around that, because a lot of the projects that we had, or the revenue, the expenditure that we had budgeted, was within our new schools, and the debt service for those wasn't, is not going to kick in until most largely next year. So we were able to complete the slate of projects that we had on board for this year. And as well, remember, we estimated a little bit more conservatively for this year and had a sizable reserve that was following into the next year with our sales tax. So we were able to pretty much stay on board with the projects that we had planned for this year, not have to reduce anything out. The impact we're feeling is going to be for now, next year, 21, ongoing.
Right. That's what I suspected. I wanted to make sure that we had discussed that. So if anybody's watching, they realize that no projects got dropped this year. The impact's going to be in the future years, because we bonded the new construction, so that money's there. And we with regard to bond payments, because of the use of impact fees first and sales tax second, in the early years of the bond payments, you feel confident that we're going to be able to stroke those payments every year without any problem?
Yes, those are our first priority. So maybe we go into the conversation now. Mr. Nathan, are you there? Did we get you back connected?
I'm here.
Awesome. Because I wanted to go into the conversation to try to answer the question that you had a little bit earlier. So talking about, we're in the process now where we're knowing or estimating what our next 5 years of revenue are going to be within sales tax. So the question was, well, how do you figure which projects are going in there being used for that funding source? So the first step with that, we have our capital committee, which is made up of various people across the district, from financial area, from the business services area, from the operations area, including maintenance, construction, and planning. We have people from our technology division and people from academic services as well come in and out when requested. And that capital committee views our business services area, of course, is responsible for coming up with what we believe in that for that 5-year plan our total revenue will be from all sources. And then each area is responsible for providing a list of projects and prioritizing those projects based on a set of criteria. The board provided us a set of core values that they wanted us to follow in terms of prioritizing projects. And then also each area prioritizes projects in terms of order of importance. What is, the oldest facilities and what needs to be done, so on and so forth. So we rely on our subject matter experts in each of those areas to compile that list of projects that need to be done and are the most pressing in the 5-year window. So then we take those projects, and after we estimate costs related to those, we're comparing our total revenue to our total expenditures inside of those 5 years. And then if necessary, and it's always necessary, then we have to make sure that we're cutting out our lowest priority projects in order to balance the budget in total. So once we have done that, we have our slate of what we have identified to be the highest priority projects, capital projects across the district in a 5-year period. Then we take those projects and we identify our funding sources to be attached to those projects. So we have to consider the statutory or the regulatory requirements around each of those funding sources, and our most restricted funding sources are utilized first. And in terms of the priority of projects, our new student stations, or the payment of the mortgage, the payment of the debt comes first, right? So that's always going to be taken care of. And then after that first priority, then comes the maintenance of our existing buildings, especially the older ones, and then all of our safety and other related maintenance projects. So as we look at projects on the slate to funding sources, we have to first match up to make sure that each of those are allowed inside of the funding sources that we use. We seek to use the most restricted funding first because, you have the shorter amount of projects that can be utilized for, your most restricted funding source. In capital, our most restricted funding source is impact fees. The only reason we can use impact fees is to basically build new schools or to somehow mitigate the growth of, new students, which really is our new student stations. And so that's why I believe Mr. Semino asked earlier, so are these new schools, are they just sales tax or are they a combination of sales tax and something else? Most likely will be a combination of sales tax and impact fees because we have to utilize our impact fees first and foremost for the payment of debt, and we want to utilize for the payment of debt for new schools, and we want to utilize all of our impact fees. So we'll utilize those impact fees first for the payment of debt, and then however much we're collecting for impact fees, whatever else we have left on the debt, if impact fees doesn't cover all of the debt, then we can move to one of two funding sources, either sales tax, if it's one of our new schools that we're just now building, or if it's debt on one of our old existing schools that we've, built years ago, then we're going to have to use property tax revenue for that, right? So it's a kind of a puzzle we're putting together here with our different funding sources. Then when we get to our sales tax, we have to first and foremost look at our 4 categories that we told our voters that we would be focusing on: our maintenance, technology, safety, or new construction. And then based on that criteria, we will then pick the highest priority projects that haven't already been covered by some other funding source, and we'll take those and we'll say, okay, we're going to utilize sales tax for these highest priority projects. And then we utilize after we've utilized all of our sales tax funds in that way, then we'll utilize our property tax revenues as well in order to complete the slate of how we will fund each of the projects that we have in the 5 years. So that's kind of an overview of how we do that, kind of putting the puzzle together of all the rules and regulations we have to follow, the priority of the projects, when we want them to be done, and, you know, the cash flows of when we figure, you know, these revenues are going to be coming in. And we are still inside of that process right now for our new fiscal year, FY21, and the 4 years beyond that, which is why we don't have the full slate of projects for you now, but we'll expect to have additional information for you on that in September when we meet again. So, Mr. Nathan, how does that sound to you? Tell me a little bit more about some other questions you may have.
I actually thought, I think for the first time that I could actually sort of explain that to somebody.
Okay.
That was excellent. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Okay. And we can, again, go a little bit more into detail about that the next time, which we'll have detailed projects and funding sources for you the next time we come together in September.
My goal was to be able to do an easy way of explaining it. Thank you, Thank you.
Okay. So then, so that brings us to the next part of the agenda, which typically you would be looking at our financials and looking at the quarterly report and the annual report, which we provided each to you. You would be approving the expenditures from the previous quarter, but then you would also be prospectively approving projects for the next quarter. Because we're kind of in the middle of the budget process right now, we did not provide as of yet the projects for, you know, the next quarter and coming up, because we are inside of that process. But we did provide just the annual, excuse me, the annual report given all year, since now we're kind of to the 4 quarters. And of course, that was as of the end of May, which was kind of when we were compiling this information for the group to get it out to you a little bit early. So of course, it will change before the actual end of the fiscal year, because we just got some new information in yesterday. But as of the date that we compiled these, May 25th, we do have actuals for you on an annual basis all year long. And then we've got the quarterly report for you broken down from 2019, first 2 quarters, and then 2020 fiscal year, all quarters there. So we try to get a good balance for you in terms of the pictures and the representations and illustrations that we had in the presentation, but still wanted to provide the financials that we had been providing before in a little bit of a different format to provide some additional detail on the numbers, and then kind of get some guidance from the committee as to moving forward what types of information you would like to see, and will we still keep the same votes that we had done before versus, about, previous expenditures and future projects, or whether you saw that kind of moving differently in the future.
Comments or questions from members of the committee? Steve.
If I understood the budgeting description properly, it seems like it would be difficult to delineate for the public a list of projects that were built that would otherwise not have happened had it not been for the sales tax. Because when you're taking your funding for the most restricted sources first, you may be applying that to a lower priority project, knowing that the sales tax money could backfill. It's going to be real tough to make a list of projects that we did with the sales tax that might not have otherwise happened. Is that correct?
Let me take a stab at that.
Okay.
I don't think so, because impact fees, while they're the primary source to pay the debt service, wouldn't have supported the debt service to build any of the schools. Impact fees as a sole source, you don't bond on.
Right.
So,
understand that.
yeah, so for all practical purposes, because we're bonding the new schools with sales tax as the primary pledge, I would say the list of new schools would not go forward if we were using the other available revenue streams, because you couldn't have used those to bond with.
Less of them would go forward.
Yeah, you could have borrowed less if you used COPS and you use.
I'm asking the question, Amy, because I'm looking ahead, and at some point in time, you're going to, you know, it's early at this point, but there's going to be a point in time where we're going to start to report and formulate to the voters that pass something what has happened with their money and what benefit they've received.
Yes.
And the commingling of the monies from a budget standpoint make that really complicated to present to the voters with clarity. And I just urge you to kind of, over time, as you work through your budget process for this next year, try to identify how you could report in an honest fashion what we are able to accomplish with sales tax numbers. What's happened that wouldn't have happened had they been absent?
Okay.
We're going to want to provide that to the voters.
Yes. So
Not as simple as, you know, school MMM.
Yeah. So I think I understand what you're saying. So I think seeing as how new schools or student stations are our first priority, because we're growing, 1.5% to 2% a year. We're growing like gangbusters. So that would have been the priority under any circumstance. So I think for us, it is safe to say that even if we hadn't received the sales tax, we would have somehow had to get those new schools, right? So what really is coming on, or what really we're able to do because of the sales tax, are all of the maintenance projects that we have, underneath our slate. Most of those being funded in sales tax. So I think honestly we could say every single maintenance, security, technology project that we have was enabled or was, made possible by the sales tax funding that we had. And then I think we can also go and say that of whatever amount of money that we're using to fund the debt service of any of our new schools, we can say that we were able to bring on that much more, that same amount of additional maintenance projects, because we didn't have to use another funding source in order to accomplish that.
And it could be that you take the interest expense on the new schools paid for by impact fees and make that a project, if you will, that's reported. But I just would urge you to think ahead. At some point in time, the district will likely want to see this come back again and get passed again. And it's a packaging challenge for the future. And if you try to do it at the tail end, it's going to be really tough.
Right. Okay. Yes, understood. And I think for reference of that communication, one of the things that we talked about, I think I turned my mic off. One of the things that we talked about here together at the last committee meeting, you all said, hey, we need to communicate to the public. Let's have an annual report. It's been a year. So let's put something together and communicate that to the public, so that we're doing this as we go along. It's not like we wait till 9 years down the road and say this is what it is. So we actually have a working draft of that annual report. We're updating it and making the final touches on that, and then we'll be sharing with the committee very soon what that annual report looks like. Look forward to your feedback, and then once we finalize that, we'll be able to communicate that to the public. And maybe just as well that we wait just a little bit, timing now. There's a lot of things that people are thinking about, and a lot of things going on, and a lot of noise. So yes,
Much better, incidentally, than
good.
best report I think we've had. Yes,
Good. Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Could you come up? You have to come up to the mic so they can hear you. On the
Sorry. If you come up to the mic, that way they can hear you on the recording.
Apologize, you may have said it. What is the dollar amount of impact fee? When you talk impact fee, is there a dollar amount?
Yes, so. Thank you. 64 million in impact fees, and that includes any reserve that we would have had, as well as a current year collection as well.
Any other questions before we address the motions? Normally, we have two motions, and we'll only be having one tonight because we don't have the related projects perspective going forward for the next quarter yet. So we would only have a motion to approve the financials as presented for the fiscal year and for the last quarter as of 5/25.
Second.
Who made the motion?
I was second.
Chris and...
I made the motion, Steve seconded.
All right, there you go. Greta, you have that? I do. Thank you. Discussion to the motion. Hearing no discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we do not have to vote on the project, so we move on to member comments. Any member comments this evening? Seeing none, I would like to recognize Board Member Patrica. This will be your last meeting, I understand, as our representative. Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Hi.
There you go.
Very good hands with Juanita Giddens, who will be taking over as the board liaison for the ISSOC committee. I've enjoyed this very much. Thank you for your service to our community and our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member. Any other member comments? Ms. Greta?
So I have a question. I'll come to mine. My question is, as we were appointed to the committee, some of us were appointed for 1 year. And so I assume that the new appointments will be done.
Well, now, that is a great question, and we'll go back and do some research and find that out, and make sure to communicate that.
Thank you.
Yes, I saw an email where one person had a question about their term was a single year, and we'll have to, I suspect the research will be done by the attorney's office to determine what the board needs to do, and we will probably, the staff will reach out to the members who had a single-year term, confirm their willingness to continue to serve, and then probably present those names for a new full term at the appropriate following school board meeting.
And one more question. Mm-hmm.
Is there an update on the public website?
Did you say an update on the public
any
website?
Updates? Is this information on there? Has it been updated all along?
So yes. So information on each of the sales tax projects is on the sales tax dashboard, as well as all of the information that we share with you all is also posted to the website as well, along with recordings of the meetings. So all on the website, yes. And it sounds like from the feedback we got, we like what we got here, so we'll kind of continue that format going forward. And I just would really like to thank, all of the staff for helping work and compiling all of this stuff. And a special shout out to Sarah Cox and Miss Susan Millay, who truly helped to, really kind of solidify our format. So I appreciate your work very much. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Seeing none, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for coming.
All right.
Stay safe.